Hi everyone, welcome back to Books with Karen. If you're new here, thanks so much for coming over, and if you're not new and you're a returning subscriber or viewer, thanks so much for coming back. Today's video is a reading wrap up of books that I read in August, September. I've kind of got a little bit in a rut with me reading. I haven't been reading as much, but I have gotten through 6 books since August. So not brilliant, but it's better than not reading anything. So I'm just going to go through them one by one in no particular order. The first one I read is Tales from the Cafe by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and this is the second in the series of Before the Coffee Gets Cold books. I've already read Before the Coffee Gets Cold, which was the first one, and I've read the third one, which is Before Your Memory Fades, and then I've just read the second one. So I've read them all out of sync, but that's not really a problem because you don't have to read them in order, although I would actually like to go back and read them in order. I think that would be good. So these are Japanese fiction and it's translated into English. So it's set in a cafe in Tokyo, where if you go into the cafe and you sit in a certain seat in the cafe and tell them that you want to go back in time or forward in time to see somebody to kind of face up to your past so you can move on with your future, then you are able to do that in this cafe. So it is a fantasy book. So they usually have the books, the other 2 books I've read and this one, they usually have 4 stories in them where different people will come to the cafe and they will sit in that table, they'll get the coffee poured and they'll go back in time to meet a person that they want to speak to again, just so they can get their head straight about what happened and they can move on, basically. There is some rules. You're not allowed to leave your seat once you go back in time. You have to stay put, and you've only got the time it takes until your coffee gets cold or before your coffee gets cold to do what you need to do and finish the coffee up and return to the present time. If you don't complete what you're doing before the coffee gets cold and finish it up, then you are stuck there. You are stuck in whatever time you went back to, and you have to sit in that chair forever, basically, as a kind of a ghost. The stories they're sometimes sad, they're sometimes inspiring. There's things like people want to go back to speak to someone who's dead. You can't change the future. So if that person's dead, they will still be dead. But you can go back and speak to them, but you can't change the future. So it's just really to satisfy yourself and make things better for you as you go forward. Now, I did find the other 2 books I read really good. They are an easy read, although sometimes the fact that it is translated from Japanese is a little bit tricky because the names are unfamiliar and sometimes the way the sentences are structured are a little bit clunky, I found, but they are usually easy to read. They're nice stories. They're very small books. I think there's only 188 pages in this one and the others are the same, but they are usually heartwarming and I read them fairly quickly. But I didn't think this one was as good as the other 2. Now, I'm not sure why. I don't know whether it was the stories that were chosen, the people who were chosen. I just didn't find this one as good, although I did give it 3 stars. I would have given the other 2 probably 4 stars for me because I did find them, they were different and it was a really different read for me. There is another 3 in the series, so there's 6 altogether, and I will definitely be picking those up and reading them at some point. So as well as following the 4 characters that are in each book who are wanting to go back in time, you also throughout all, I'm assuming all 6 books, but definitely the 3 I've read, they have the same characters going throughout the story. So the person who runs the cafe the people who work at the cafe, some people who are regulars at the cafe. So they are a theme that run throughout all of the series, and you get to know them a bit more. You get to know their stories, and you get to know how they've ended up where they are. So I do recommend the Before the Coffee Gets Cold books, but this one just not quite as good as the other two. The next book I read was a book I got out of the library, so I will put a picture up here, and that was The Hourglass by Tracy Rees. And this was a dual timeline book. It followed two women, Nora and Chloe. Nora is in 2014 and Chloe's story starts in 1950. And this book is set in Tenby in Wales, which was one of the main reasons that I picked this book up, because I've been to Tenby before and it is a fabulous place. Loved it. So I was keen to read a story that was set there. Like I said, it's dual timeline, so the chapters kind of swap each other off, interchange. You've got like 1950, then the next chapter will be 2014, then you'll go back, then you'll go forward. It's not confusing because the chapters are marked so you know where you are. It's basically a romance, a mystery, I guess, because it's set in the 50s as well. It could be classed as historical, although it wasn't really a thing for me. It was more of a mystery romance. It starts with the book where Nora, who is 40 something, she's having a bit of a midlife crisis. I think she's living in London, and she keeps having these recurring dreams about being on this beautiful beach in Tenby. She's never been to Tenby before. So she decides to up sticks, rents out a flat, and she goes to Tenby. Where she tries to find out, why she's having these dreams and what's going wrong in her life and all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, next chapter in 1950, Chloe starts to go to her Aunt Susan's, who lives in Tenby. Chloe lives, I think she lives in Cardiff. She goes on holiday to her Aunt Susan's in Tenby every year. This is the start of it in the 1950s, and she stays there for 3 weeks, like for a summer holiday, and she goes there every year. And it tells her chapters go through the story of her 3 weeks each year as she's there. She makes friends with a boy who's 2 years younger than her called Lou Jones, and they become really good friends, and they're inseparable while she's there. In each chapter with Chloe, it goes ahead a year, so you're kind of jumping a year in her life for each of her chapters, whereas Nora is more of a continuous storyline. And something happens in one of Chloe's visits to Tenby. She meets an older boy, and it kind of puts a bit of a strain on her and Lou's relationship, and therein lies the big mystery. They fall out and you don't know why. The story takes you step by step through the years and kind of gives you bits of information in each chapter to build up to the ending where you find out what it's all about. I did find this book a little bit slow. It was in a great setting, the descriptions of Tenby, I could picture them, really enjoyed that. The characters of Chloe and Nora I thought were well written. The book was actually well written. I just found it a little bit slow. I felt like they spent too much time in Chloe's chapters talking about things that she and Lou were doing that I didn't feel were relevant. It didn't really move the story on. I did give this book a 3.5 stars because it was enjoyable. It would be a brilliant holiday read, especially if you were in Tenby reading it. But yeah, 3.5 stars. And I would possibly read more of Tracy Rees books as well. So if that's your kind of thing, like a mystery, a bit of romance, dual timelines, set in a beautiful setting, then it's probably for you. Now, the next book I read was Mary the First, Queen of Sorrows by Alison Weir. If you've watched my channel before, you'll know I absolutely love Alison Weir books. I've read the 6 Tudor Queen books that she wrote. So she did a book for each of Henry VIII's wives, and the stories are told from the woman's perspective, the Queen's perspective, rather than Henry VIII's, which is a novelty because I've never read that before. I've got a fascination for the Tudors, a fascination for Henry VIII, so these books are ideal for me. So I've read the Six Queens one, I've read the one about Henry VIII, so this one was next on the list, Mary the First, Queen of Sorrows. And this is about Mary, who was Catherine of Aragon's daughter with Henry VIII. So she possibly had one of the most turbulent times, with her mother being kind of pushed out and divorced because he wanted to marry Anne Boleyn, and then she was disinherited and she wasn't going to be heir to the throne. And it takes you through her story, Mary's story, from being a young child while her mother was still married to Henry, and takes her through her life until her death, as all of the books by Alison Weir do. They are fiction, but Alison Weir is, as well as being an author, she is a historian, so she knows her stuff. And actually in the back of the book, you do get the author's note about the facts of Mary I, and she tells you which of the things she's kind of embellished or added to the story just to make it better fiction. And you also get a timeline at the back of the book to tell you when these events happened. I didn't find this book as good as the other ones, and I think that's because it's Mary and she's around right from the first wife, Catherine of Aragon. You're getting the story again of how Henry was with each of the wives up until Mary I came to the throne. And because I'd only just read those books or have read them recently, that's all kind of fresh in my mind. So I felt like I was getting a lot of information again that I'd already read. But the story was interesting. She did put an interesting spin on the story. I think Mary I, she was a very religious woman, and I think that was probably to her detriment. I think that's what caused a lot of the problems that she felt or she had. Obviously it is fiction, but I guess there must be some truth in it. I did find it a little bit depressing because as Mary I, she as like I say, she was very religious. And if you didn't follow the same religion as her, you were basically burned at the stake. So yeah, a bit depressing, but I'm pleased I read it. I did enjoy it, and I am hoping that Alison Weir our next book is going to be about Elizabeth I, who was Anne Boleyn's daughter, because I think that would be a really good read. I didn't really know a lot about Mary I or Elizabeth I, so yeah, that would be interesting to read as well. And I did give this a 3.5 star, even though I gave a lot of the other Alison Weir books 4 stars, 4.5 stars, 3.5 stars for this one, I think purely because of the repetition. So the next book I read was a Sophie Hannah book, which is The Couple at the Table. Now I love Sophie Hannah. I've read lots of her books, and I love the ones especially that feature Simon and Charlie, who are the detectives. Simon and Charlie are married, and their relationship has kind of been woven into each of her books. So I was quite happy that they were in this one as well. This is a mystery thriller. Obviously, it's got detectives in it, and it starts where this couple, Jane and William, are on their honeymoon at a luxury resort in the UK, and Simon and Charlie are there as well on a short break. And it's a fantastic luxury resort, and there are 5 other couples there, 4 other couples, plus Simon and Charlie, plus Jane and William, who are on honeymoon. And William's ex-wife is also there with her partner. Awkward. So, and I think there's also the woman who runs the resort as well. She's there throughout. But Jane and William, or Jane, gets a note shoved through her door at this resort that says, "Beware of the couple at the table next to you," or beware of the couple at the table nearest to you. And then someone dies, and the investigation obviously involves Simon and Charlie as well, but it is discovered that the only person that could have killed the one that got murdered is somebody that was in that resort at the time. So one of these 6 couples or the person who was running the resort, they are the only people that could have murdered this person. But then it turns out that they were all together and they said nobody left. So the story kind of takes you through what actually happened, and you find out who killed this person. It jumps timelines a lot in this book. It'll go from chapter to chapter, and it'll go backwards and then it'll go forwards. And there was sometimes I wasn't really sure which timeline I was in, because the chapter wasn't marked as what year it was, or was it? It may have been actually. I think the chapters may have been marked. Yes, they were, with dates. But sometimes I did get a little bit confused at which time I was in. I did enjoy the book. I mean, I enjoy Sophie Hannah. I don't think it was one of her best books. I guess when you write that many books, then some of them may just lose the sparkle that they had at the beginning. But I did give this a 3.5 stars. It's definitely readable, and again, brilliant holiday read if you wanted to take it away with you. Yeah, I think it would be worth a read. It says 6 couples, 1 honeymoon resort, an impossible murder, and it did what it said on the tin, to be fair. But yeah, 3.5 stars. So the next book was The House Across the Street by Lesley Pearse, and this was our book club read for September. There is a longer discussion on this book, which I will link at the end. We did a live YouTube review of this, I think it was last week. So if you want to revisit that and find out more about it and go more in depth, then I will link that video at the end. But yeah, this was about Katie, who lives in this street with her mum and dad and her brothers at university, and one night the neighbour's house burns to the ground, and the neighbour is called Gloria, and it turns out that Gloria and her daughter were in the house at the time and they're dead. And Katie's father gets arrested for the murder. The rest of the book is really about, did Katie's dad really do it? Or if he didn't, who did it and why did they do it? You know, there's a mysterious woman going to Gloria's house regularly, bringing other women with her. And it's a kind of a mystery what they're about. And this is set in the 60s, but didn't really feel like it was a historical novel. Again, a bit like the Hourglass, I didn't feel like I was in a different timeline. It could have literally been set now. I don't think that was particularly relevant. I thought some of the plot lines were a bit unbelievable, and I thought the mystery and some of the things that happened were very quickly sorted out and tied up, which I found that a bit unbelievable. Some of the things that were happening. It was a very gritty topic that was the theme of the book. Spoiler here, if you don't want to know what the theme of the book is, turn off. The theme of the book is domestic violence. A very gritty topic, but I feel like it was dealt with too simply, even though it was graphic in some places. I feel like the topic was dealt with simply. There's a few people on Goodreads have said this book was written as though it was for a young audience, which I didn't feel, but I understand what they meant, because yeah, it was too simplified. I think if it had been written by somebody like Martina Cole, it would have been so much more graphic and delved more deeply into it, which I felt it didn't go with this book. Having said that, it was an enjoyable read. It was a page turner. I did want to know what happened, but I gave this a 3 stars. I know there are people in the book club who were on the live chat last week who really enjoyed it and gave it 4 stars. Somebody gave it a 5 stars, but there were a couple of people who didn't finish it and didn't like it. So it'll be interesting if you've read this book, let me know in the comments below, because it seems to have divided opinions. Just before I go on to the next book, if you are interested in joining the book club, it's an online book club. Obviously, we have a Facebook group that goes with it, where we choose a book each month to read, and then I do a live review of it, either right at the end of the month or just at the beginning of the next month. People can join me on camera, or they can join in on the chat. So that was the one for September. The one for October, the one that was voted on, got the most votes, is The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. I have read this before. I read this earlier in the year and I really enjoyed it. So I may read it again this month, but it's still fresh in my mind. So I should be able to have a good discussion about it when the live comes around. So if you'd like to join the book club, it doesn't cost you anything. There is a link below to the Facebook group in the description box if you want to go over there, because we discuss different books in there. And every month I'll put up the poll in YouTube and in Facebook, and people can choose which book they would prefer to read. So yeah, in the description box below, I'll leave the links for the book club. So going on to the next book, and I read Dracula. This is also, there is also a longer video talking about Dracula that I did. I think it was at the weekend. I will link to this again at the end of the video. I read this with my son and we discussed it. The Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula the book versus Bram Stoker's Dracula the film with Gary Oldman, and we discussed that on video together. But yeah, I love this book. I mean, it's a cloth-bound Penguin classic, and it's just a lovely book. You can get a few of the classics in this style, which would look really good on the bookshelf. I did find it a little bit difficult to read in places because it was written in 1897 and it's written in like Old English. So it did take me more time to read this than it would take me to read something like The House Across the Street. But I did enjoy it. It is different to the film, but I think the book is so much more atmospheric. I mean, everybody knows the story of Dracula, so I don't really need to go into it. But I did give this 4 stars. There's no gore, no sex in the book like there is in the film. Like I say, if you want to watch a more in-depth discussion of it, then I'll put the link I'll put the link at the end of the video. So yeah, 4 stars for Dracula, and I would like to read some more classics. The last book I read, which I've just actually finished this morning, is Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young. Now, I'd been putting off reading this because I had heard a couple of other YouTubers saying they didn't like it. It is a fantasy mystery book. So the characters are Emery and August, who are kind of girlfriend and boyfriend as they're grown up, and it's set on a place called Saoirse Island, which is a fictional island in America. And Emery, August, Lily and Dutch are all friends when they're growing up, and then one night something happens and Lily is found dead in the woods, and August is blamed for her murder, but they can't find enough evidence to hit him with or to make it convict him. So August and his mother leave the island because they don't feel safe, and they go. And then it's 14 years later, and August comes back to the island because his mother has died and he wants to bury her ashes there, as was her wishes. And when he comes back, that kind of throws up lots of different questions. It brings it all up again. The people on the island aren't happy about it. Emery's not happy that August left her and didn't say goodbye, and nobody knows who murdered Lily, and it's a whole thing. as well as that, there is magical qualities to this island and to some of the people on the island. They are kind of witches. This did give me a vibe of practical magic. It wasn't exactly the same, but I think the setting of it and some of the magical elements of it did give me vibes of practical magic. Even though this is like a murder mystery book, it did feel like a cozy read. I'm not sure why, but I really did enjoy this. Again, it jumps timelines, so you're going backwards to when Lily is murdered and even before that, and then you're going forward to present time, so you can get the information about all of the characters as they kind of grow up and in the 14 years in between. I found it a little bit slow to start, but from the last third of the book was a definite page turner. I just needed to know what was going on, and I did kind of guess the twist, but yeah, not until quite near the end. But like I say, I really did enjoy this book. I gave it 4 stars, and I would definitely read more of Adrienne Young's books. If anybody's read any of them, let me know what you thought, because I did think this was really good. But again, it seems to have divided opinion. So if you have read this one, let me know. So those were all of the books that I read during August and September. The only other book that I'm been reading, and I'm still reading, well, I'm not reading, I'm listening to it, and it is an audio book of the Ozzy Osbourne autobiography. Me and my husband Warren listen to it in the car, so I'm not listening to it all the time. It's just on, like, when we're driving for at least half an hour, we'll put that on and we'll listen to it. So we've been listening to it for quite a while, and I really did enjoy the first part of his autobiography, where he talks about growing up, and up until the point where he kind of joined Black Sabbath and he was becoming famous. And from then, for me, all it seemed to be was, you know, oh, I got drunk or I got stoned and this is what I did. And to be quite honest, I think if anybody had drank and taken drugs to the extent that Ozzy Osbourne did, I honestly don't think he would remember any of the things that he's talking about. So there is a lot of that book where I'm like, I don't quite believe that happened. So yeah, I haven't finished it yet. We will go on to finish it, but I think the middle section of that book is a little bit, oh God, not this again. It just felt like it was the same story over and over again. But yeah, again, if anybody's listened to that or read that, let me know what you thought. So those are all my books that I've read in August and September. I hope you enjoyed the reviews. Let me know what you've read in August and September. I like to hear, because it may be something I want to read. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.